right, looks like folks are gonna start rolling in here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're gonna give it a couple minutes before we get started. So just sit tight. Thanks everyone for being here. We're gonna just give it a few more minutes while it looks like everyone's rolling in, and then we'll kick things off. Okay, looks like we're still having some folks roll in, but Eric, why don't you go ahead and kick things off?
All right, thank you, Susie, and welcome everybody. This is our second webinar of a three-part series, and we're working hard to shine a light on all the great innovation and entrepreneurial activity happening here in the Midwest. We visited Minnesota in late July. We're here in Missouri and Kansas today, and then we'll finish up in Wisconsin on Wednesday, September 30th. And these visits are all stepping stones to our big annual event, Co-Invest Cleantech, which we have scheduled this year virtually on October 22nd. For those of you who have been at the event, we'll still have pitches from companies that we've recently invested in. We'll also have pitches from other exciting companies from around the region. And we're pretty excited that we also have Jason Jacobs of My Climate Journey podcasting fame. He'll be doing an interview with Rodrigo Prudencio, who heads up Amazon's $2 billion climate pledge fund. Many of you may have seen that announcement that Amazon made. So we're certainly excited to learn more about what they're going to be investing in and looking to accomplish with that pot of money. So we're super excited that we've been able to make some lemonade from the lemons that COVID has dealt us. So again, that's going to be on October 22nd. So we're looking forward to having people join us then. Before we dive in today, why don't we take a quick survey to see just what areas of clean tech people in the audience find most interesting. Susie? So you should all see a survey on your screen, and it would be great if you could click on a response that kind of most resonates with you. And then Susie, when we get critical mass, please kind of publish the results. All right. We're pretty well balanced across the board. Renewables obviously are in the lead. Water is kind of bringing up the rear, but pretty well balanced. That's great. All right. Cool. Well, before we dive in, let me just provide everybody a brief overview of Clean Energy Trust. Some of you who joined us in Minnesota may have heard this, so please bear with me if I cover similar ground. But Clean Energy Trust, we were founded in 2010, and we are a 501c3, and our mission is to help commercialize innovative technologies that deliver clean energy, decarbonization, and environmental sustainability solutions. And even though we have energy in our name, our work really transcends electrons. We look at water technologies, we look at ag tech, we look at mobility, we look at innovations around the circular economy and recycling. The common denominator is positive environmental impact. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we work across the region that we call the mid-continent. And we are big believers in the power of entrepreneurship and innovation to bring about solutions to our environmental challenges, and also, importantly, particularly now, as solutions to, or as, as sort of drivers that can create jobs and economic development, and in turn, create attractive investment and business opportunities. We execute our work through something we call a 501(c) platform. There are 3 pillars to that. The first is find. We spend a considerable amount of time and effort in market identifying promising entrepreneurs and startups to invest and support. The second pillar is fund. We make, the second pillar is fund. We make catalytic seed investments in these companies. We're typically the first money in, so we're going in very, very early. And our check sizes typically range from $100,000 to $300,000. And then the third pillar is grow. We roll up our sleeves and work alongside these companies to help them scale and succeed. And inherent in all of this work is just supporting the ecosystem writ large. So we do a lot of work around convening and bringing various stakeholders together to make sure that the environment that these companies are working in is as frictionless as possible. We began making seed investments in 2014 through a revolving fund that is capitalized with philanthropic dollars. So unlike a traditional GP/LP venture capital fund, we're not looking to return money back to investors. We're looking to earn a return so that we can keep making new investments into the kind of the next generation of promising companies. To date, we've deployed $5.5 million into 34 companies. And we've also enjoyed 4 profitable exits that we've recycled those proceeds from into new companies. Key to our work is kind of catalyzing investment and helping our companies raise additional capital. And we've helped them raise $26 of incremental funding for every $1 that we've invested, for a total of $145 million. So we're pretty happy with that leverage. So today we're gonna look at a couple markets that are near and dear to our hearts. The first is Kansas City. The second is St. Louis. And our goal will be to adjourn by 4:15. But Susie will be taking questions. So if you have questions, please submit them via the chat function. She'll compile them and then feed those to the panelists to answer. So with that, let's kick off and begin with Kansas City. We're grateful to have Ryan Pletka of Black & Veatch, Jeff Lynch of IdleSmart, and Sunny Sandwar of Dynamics with us here today. I will allow each of them to introduce themselves, and then after those introductions, I'll moderate some questions and dialogue. And with that, Ryan, would you like to go first, introduce yourself and a little bit of the work that you're doing at Black & Veatch?
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. It's great to be with everybody this afternoon. This is Ryan Pletka with Black & Veatch, and I'm Vice President within our Innovation and Strategy team at the company that we call the Growth Accelerator. So for those not familiar with Black & Veatch, we're a fairly large engineering construction company, do about $4 billion a year worth of projects all over the world, largely in the infrastructure space, projects in the power space, water, communications, things like that. The focus of our innovation team is to really help move the company forward, both in those core markets that we're already active in, as well as explore brand new markets and technologies and services for the company. So I spend quite a bit of time in that area myself, looking for new opportunities for the company. And a lot of that really comes from our engagement with the external ecosystems, including startup companies, universities, other large corporations, foundations alike. Our innovation team's been around for about 4.5 years. Last year, we did our first external accelerator program, worked with 7 Cleantech companies. This year, we're working with 18 companies in an accelerator program we call IgniteX, and our focus entirely this year is on COVID-19 response and how we can help and really help work with these companies to accelerate their promising solutions to market. So great to be here today.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself and Idle Smart?
Sure thing. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. My name is Jeff Lynch. I'm the president and founder of Idle Smart. And Idle Smart provides fuel efficiency and remote management solutions for fleets across the U.S. and Canada. If you think about fleets, think about sleeper cabs, school buses, or even vehicles as small as ambulances and emergency vehicles. And what we offer to fleets is critical because it's pretty common for them to spend $3,000 to $4,000 per vehicle per year on fuel just as a result of unnecessary idling. And maybe even more importantly, they're almost always reactively managing things like vehicle uptime. And so through our patented and proprietary solution, we're able to address and solve for sort of the two key fleet operating metrics virtually every fleet cares about, which is fuel efficiency and vehicle uptime. And because we do this and continuously monitor things remotely, we're also able to help fleets be proactive in managing vehicle downtime and diagnostics. For context, by the way, just so you know, a vehicle that idles an hour a year, and again, most vehicles might idle 1,000 to 1,500 hours a year, every gallon of diesel fuel is about 22 pounds of CO2. So it's both what we think is a compelling financial payback as well as a compelling environmental payback. That's it.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And Sunny?
Eric, thanks so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Sunny Sanwar. I'm the founder and CEO at Dynamics, where we create, deploy, and scale data models that help cities, utilities, and corporations both scope, start, and track clean energy projects with mathematically verifiable measurements on impact, so reduced CO2, CO2e, et cetera, both through visual-based and analytics infrastructure and also through APIs. We are using data to match decision makers and communities with personalized, practical, and visually measurable ways to lower the cost of addressing climate change. Being from Bangladesh, this is something that's broadly very important to me, given the climate impacts that we're seeing are already devastating. So I'm very excited to play a role in the solution. We recently graduated from the Jules Accelerator and are an excellent 2C2I cohort company, which so far has been really great, getting access to different types of decision makers and understanding how climate action looks at the forefront. So glad to be here.
All right, thanks, Sonny. And as a brand new father, I'm sure that the work that you do on climate probably has added significance as you think about the future. So again, thanks for joining us. I know that your hands are full. So why don't we, Ryan, if you don't mind, why don't I start with you? Black & Veatch, founded over 100 years ago in Kansas City. Leader in infrastructure solutions across that time. I imagine that just the pace of change that Black & Veatch is witnessing today is just exponentially greater than perhaps at any other time in its history. And you're sort of at the edge of trying to make sense of all of that. You touched upon it a little bit in terms of your engagement with accelerators and external parties, but can you talk about just maybe a little more detail on kind of how you guys are staying at the forefront of what's happening across the different industries that you're working in?
Yeah, it's really exciting. At least it excites me, that pace of change. So it's kind of like comes in a few different areas. There's all the external things happening, like pandemic, the presidential election, all those sorts of things that really change the world that we live in. And then the other realm, I think, is sort of like the needs of consumers, the needs of our clients, and how they respond to sort of meet critical infrastructure challenges, whatever they are. Keeping the lights on. Out here in the Bay Area right now where I'm at, we've got tons of wildfires. So, how do you address external factors like that? And people still need, though, reliable energy. They still need clean food and water. And the third thing is then really around how we as a company, or generally society, other companies, manage that process and provide those services to people. So that can include innovation around the tools we use to design and build things. We're doing a lot of work in autonomous construction equipment, robotics, to try to make things safer, more efficient, as well as design tools and things like that. So the great thing about all those things, and particularly now, I feel like this is like one of the best years for innovation, given the scale of the problems that we have as a society to deal with. It's so many new possible solutions for problems that people, didn't worry about, but there's plenty to worry about right at the moment. So for an innovator, it's a great time to innovate, because problems are the root of all innovation.
Yep, yep. And then you mentioned the Ignite X program, and that this year it was focused exclusively on COVID-19 solutions. Are there any particular solutions that came through that were kind of blew you away as being truly innovative, and things that you didn't expect when you began the process?
There's a lot. I took it as an opportunity to learn. We had over 300 applications to this year's program. Last year, when we focused on Cleantech, we had about 110. So I really had not been very familiar with public health, things like PCR testing and disinfection protocols and all that, but learned very quickly about those things. I think we kind of group things into a few different categories. One is, how do you protect an individual? And so there's a number of innovations around new types of PPE or hand sanitizers, things like that are pretty interesting. The next is, how do you protect a place? So building, there's a lot of going on with UV disinfection, ozone. We're working with a company that has a smart UV light fixture that turns off and on based on the presence of people. And then how do you really protect the planet? And those are some of the really interesting ones, I think. If it's very expensive to test every individual, but you can potentially test the environment that those people are in to determine that some of the disinfection technology you're deploying are safe. So that could include testing the air, could include testing wastewater, surfaces, things like that. So it's a combination of all three of these things, I think, really provides a compelling way to address this COVID response, and hopefully help safeguard us for future pandemics should they occur.
Right. Great. So, Sunny, you had mentioned that you received an investment from Exelon, their 2C, 2I initiative, which I think stands for Climate Change Investment Initiative. One of the things I was fortunate to be on the judging panel when you presented early on, and one of the things that stood out for me was the use of funds that you were contemplating for the investment, particularly around your hiring strategy. Do you want to kind of shed some more light on that? I think it's kind of a neat kind of thoughtful approach.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, we're very excited to have Exelon as a strategic partner, and investor, with a large footprint both in Chicago and in the Mid Atlantic. 2C2I is a great program. I think it's an exciting initiative for climate change and for startups, because not only do we get to work with an awesome utility, the cleanest grid in the US, but working with their downstream cities and corporate clients to measure emissions and set reduction goals with real projects, so we could scale our product. And to your point, as you can imagine, having already had a clean energy startup before, I know that helping multiple stakeholders in this way necessitates multiple touch points. So during our product implementation, having a strong team is very important, and I think it's key to any startup, but more specifically for what we're doing, a hiring strategy and having a vision for that is super important. So since 2019, as a company, we were able to recruit, technology bootcamp graduates in the Kansas City area, and we've worked on very, sprint-based implementation of our modules. Now working with Duke Energy in the Carolinas, we were also able to open it up to MBA students from UNC. Being a KU guy, that hurts a little bit, but it's been great working with a distributed model of distributed teams across where we're working. So going forward, we have this vision of deploying our product in different service areas with this distributed team model. And our current work being in the Mid-Atlantic, helping Exelon's utilities integrate with their city action plans and that of their clients. We're getting ready to have account managers, success managers, but also developers who could help roll out these new modules, but also service the existing ones we've built and scaled to our clients. So we're very excited about 2C2I and very excited for growing our team in that way.
Right. But you were very conscious about looking for candidates that perhaps were coming from more, for lack of a better phrase, disadvantaged backgrounds who, perhaps had were not, did not have the luxury of opportunities that other people may have. So absolutely. I thought that was a pretty neat approach to, filling out and building out your team.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that. We really believe in fair access of clean energy to low-income areas and low-income housing and buildings that have been traditionally overlooked. Since 2019, like I said, we've had folks working on our team from, typically disenfranchised communities. So this was something that wasn't, from a perception standpoint, available to them. Working for a tech startup in climate change, but once you show them kind of what is possible and integrate them within the team and let them code and let them be on sales calls, I think they really get it and they add value that, even I didn't completely understand in past ventures. So very important, and we're very excited to be able to do it at scale.
Great. Awesome. Jeff, Idle Smart, you're working with trucking fleets and other vehicle fleets. In some respects, you could call that sort of the heartbeat of the economy. What are you witnessing across your customer base these days, kind of as a result of COVID-19? Is it really changing their, purchasing decisions and changing vehicle turnover in their fleet, or are they actually doubling down and building out and pushing forward? What's the market been like?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I guess I'd start with the fact that if you didn't understand how critical trucking sector was and truckers are to the economy, hopefully everybody has a better feel for that now. So the toilet paper and wipes and paper towels everybody was looking for, those were on a truck at some point. And so trucking, for better or for worse, is woven into the fabric of this economy, and it does keep America moving forward. So I'll start with that. But yeah, the pandemic has been, it had a pretty significant effect, I think, by most quantitative metrics, whether it be new truck builds, freight tonnage, trailer builds. All of them were off significantly, certainly in April, May, and June. It's actually come back a little bit of late. And I think probably the best data I've seen is, maybe 20% of fleets said their business was better or much better as a result of COVID, while 55% said it was worse or much worse. And so, again, that was probably April, May timeline, but, it's had a material impact on the sector and the business. And so while it's bounced back a little bit, I think some of the things that still probably hurt are just the variability of the geographic hotspots with COVID, right? So these are fleets that generally run nationwide, and so that hurts a bit. We were a recipient of some of that downstream pain. It hurt us a bit from the standpoint of, if you were a fleet and your business was measurably better, you were working hard to keep your trucks on the road, and so the idea of making a capital purchase and putting incremental equipment on your vehicle was not compelling. And for the 55 or 60% who were significantly slower, the idea of selling into a customer base that is, underutilizing its assets was pretty hard. We had to be pretty mindful of not being tone deaf and selling into a tough market. But again, it's coming back a bit. I see, again, it's trucking is woven into the fabric of what this economy is. And I think any fleet, regardless of whether it be ambulances or trucks or school buses, you know, the first or second largest operating expense is always fuel. And so even at depressed prices, even in a difficult economy, you know, fuel is going to be a major operating cost. And so we can help there. And so while we don't see it today, you know, I think we'll see a bit of a rebound in some degrees. Maybe it helps us because people get, you know, when things get tight, you get creative and you get aggressive in how to save dollars, and we think it'll help us longer term.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, one of the things that, you know, we as Clean Energy Trust, we were always, you know, really intrigued by with IdleSmart is the, you know, the emissions reduction. Also the, you know, the fact that oftentimes whether the depots or the staging areas or transfer stations or whatever are in parts of the city that are perhaps disadvantaged, or, you know, there are communities surrounding these, you know, operational areas that, you know, the emissions actually have a huge impact, and that the fact that you're managing that was really, really attractive. Are you finding fleet owners sort of in this environment, is it all boiling back down to dollars and cents and cost savings, or is the environmental impact and emissions also still factoring high?
Yeah, I think, you know, current state, I'd say there's definitely more of a renewed focus on just the financial side of it. And that's what you'd expect. I'm not dinging anybody, but I think that's probably not representative of how things have changed over the past few years. I think there's been certainly in the past 2 or 3 years, a noticeably higher level of focus on kind of that proverbial double bottom line, financial payback and environmental payback and sort of community benefit. Again, you know, you're looking at a one truck in one fleet with a do nothing approach is 44,000 pounds of CO2. Multiply that times 1,000, you know, vehicles in a fleet, and you're talking about a major, major impact. And as you point out, Eric, you know, the geographic locations of some of these terminals and some of these locations tend to, you know, disproportionately be in areas which, you know, can't afford that impact, both health-wise and otherwise. And so I think there's been a huge amount of progress. We actually just bid on an opportunity that is the first of its kind, and this is within the last 2 weeks, of a 4,000 vehicle fleet going to compressed natural gas. Great in terms of environmental impact. And so that just tells me it is on people's minds and it is part of the decision-making process. I think we still lag the Canadians. The Canadians tend to get up every morning thinking about this more than we do here in the States, but there's clearly been a lot of progress in the past few years, although the past 3 months have probably been a little bit of a sidestep just based on the raw economics of the world we're living in.
Right, great. And I just have to ask, there's been a lot of debate around the hydrogen economy, and, you know, clearly Nikola has captured a lot of people's attention. Do you see hydrogen having a role in sort of trucking anytime soon?
You know, I never say never. I look at some of these technologies, battery, hydrogen, all of these things that I think are easy to dismiss, but the reality is they're coming. Because I think the economics are big enough, the impact is big enough, they're coming. I think where it gets a little fuzzy, if you just take, you know, Nikola, for example, I think that's a great model. It works really well in light and medium duty in the near term. Heavy duty trucking is a different animal, sort of length of haul wise, weight wise, and then the technology and infrastructure hasn't kept up, but it will get there. And I think you'll start to, you're seeing it now. Just look at the number of the number of SPACs that have come out in the past 6 months that all have to do with alternative energy sources. There's real money going there. It is a problem to be solved. So it's definitely coming, without a doubt.
Yep, great. So what I'd like to do is maybe do a sort of a lightning round to get some feedback from all of you on, like, who are some of the organizations or ecosystem stakeholders in and around Kansas City or the broader Kansas market that have been helpful. Ryan, I think you guys work closely with Launch KC. Are there others that you'd like to call out that people should be aware of?
Yeah, Launch KC, the Downtown Council, Economic Development Council of Kansas City. Also, we've been doing a lot of work with University of Missouri, Kansas University, and K-State, Midwest Research Institute. I've been really impressed with the fundamental R&D that's going on within the state university systems and the capabilities, particularly learning about that as a response for COVID. So that's been really great. The KC Rise Fund, there's a lot of great entrepreneurial action happening in the Midwest. Start with the news. So it's been great to engage people for the past couple of years in many different capacities.
Right. Well, great. Sonny, you referenced the fact that you're a KU guy, but any other organizations in and around Kansas City that have been influential in your growth?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If I'm not mistaken, the city itself was one of your first customers, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, and I went to grad school at UMKC, so, you know, I have to give a big shout out to UMKC and, you know, the SBDC team, Digital Sandbox, and, you know, Lee Summit Velocity. You know, there's a bunch of, you know, early stage kind of support systems in and around Kansas City. But the city of Kansas City, Missouri, I would, you know, special call out to the city of Roland Park, Kansas, where Mayor Mike Kelly is the head of the KC Climate Action Coalition. It's a coalition of, you know, hundreds or so of city leaders that have really helped our product, you know, benefit from different types of insights. So yeah, I mean, MRI Global, I think Ryan mentioned MRI Global, did some work with them, just phenomenal in terms of their research aptitude and their presence in clean energy. So fertile, innovative, you know, groundswell in the Kansas City area for sure.
Great. Yeah, and Jeff, you guys, some of your early funding came out of Kansas City, and you've had good luck with the ecosystem there.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them have been hit on. KC Rise Fund's been great for us. You know, I think all of us have been out and raised money to realize that all dollars are not created equal. One, they're hard to come by, but when you get them, they're not created equal. And so I think about KC Rise. Actually, Eric, I put you and your team in this category. You know, those guys, and you guys bring so much more than dollars. You bring counsel, industry reach, creativity of thought. And honestly, you know, when the going gets hard in life, the crowd tends to thin pretty quickly. Those guys sort of stick around and are there to help. We all probably saw our crowds thin in the last few months. And so having partners who are willing to help you through things matter a lot. Yeah, the dollars are nice, but it matters a lot. The other one that was just mentioned, which I always think sort of flies below the radar, but I think they do amazing work, is the Digital Sandbox. They do a lot for companies sort of when they need it, early stage, giving dollars to get people off the ground, proof of concepts off the ground, and helping with access to technology, market experts. So those guys do a great job. And again, I always feel like they're sort of below the radar. And then the last, I think Sonny just mentioned, you know, the folks over at Startland News, you know, Adam and Tommy, I think they do amazing work, not just because they report about the ecosystem, but because, you know, they heard the proverbial cats. You know, KC is a pretty small community. It's a little bit disparate in trying to find its way. They do a really good job keeping things as cohesive as possible. And maybe as importantly, I think they fight the good fight. They actually go out and call the issues as they see them. It's not a cheerleading team. They're out there calling out the issues, whether it be funding or support when needed. And I think I appreciate that. I know everybody else in KC appreciates that as well.
Great. All right. Hey, Susie, how are we looking on questions?
We're looking great on questions. We had several come through, so maybe we'll keep each response down to 30, 60 seconds if you can. The first question I see is for Ryan, and it's talking about innovation coming out of universities. How do you think corporates can better engage with and foster this sphere of entrepreneurs and innovators?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that we absolutely can do a better job ourselves at Black and Beach. The amount of research within universities going on is really far greater than our knowledge of it. We've kind of done this in a couple different ways. We've asked for insights and potential solutions to problems that we know exist and that we have. And we've also just gone to the universities and listened to see what they have. And that's taken us in directions we never would have gone. For example, right now with MU, we had been working on a food safety biosensor that we're now repurposing for COVID detection. So had we not been doing anything in the food safety realm, which we don't generally do as a company, we never would have had this opportunity to work with them there. So yeah, just engaging, I think, is really the most important thing, starting that process.
Great, great. And maybe a follow-up question, digging in a little bit more to the students at universities. Do you have any suggestions for students who are first-time energy entrepreneurs?
Jeez. No. I don't know. Patience. Right? Energy is difficult, I would say, for sure. Maybe pick another sector to start in and then come to energy. But takes a very capital-intensive industry, obviously. There's tons of problems within energy. Maybe broaden it to think about climate, I would say, because climate is such a broad challenge in itself, bigger than energy. And I think there's many different possible solutions there, that some of which are easier to reach than some of the harder technical hardware challenges in energy.
Sure, sure.
Well, people can always come talk to us or go visit Brian or some of the other great organizations. There are a lot of people out there that are supporting, whose mission is to support, emerging entrepreneurs. So seek help is probably a good piece of advice.
Yeah. That's a great point. There are so many mentors and people who have made the fight against climate change their lives, and we're all happy to help facilitate conversations and spur ideas. So be proactive in who you're reaching out to. I think that's really important. We talked a little bit about hiring already, but there was a question for all panelists on what you're doing to support and elevate underrepresented people in the energy innovation space, particularly women, ethnic and racial minorities, indigenous people, et cetera. Do folks have some thoughts on how they're being proactive in their hiring practices? Maybe we can go Sunny, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. I mean, being, a minority myself, Dynamics is a minority-owned business. If Cleantech and clean energy is challenging, it's even more challenging as a minority-owned business. Just, there's a few additional hoops. So we're very cognizant of that reality. And like I mentioned earlier to Eric's question, having that baked into our hiring strategy has been critical. We've had access to information that we wouldn't have, otherwise have had if we didn't engage like a more diverse set of individuals within the team. And so on the team side, we're clearly doing that, as I mentioned. But even on the product side, we're helping cities specifically target areas that haven't had, weatherization programs in years, or any kind of investment in terms of clean energy. And a lot of cities aren't even aware that that's a reality. So both on the team side, on the product side, I think we were hyper focused on social equity and diversity. So very critical. Yep.
Great. Thank you. Let's turn it to Jeff and then Ryan, and then maybe Ryan can talk a little bit about how some of the organizations, the startups that he works with, are approaching this. So Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think just again, as Eric mentioned, sort of our general mission is reducing CO2, which we think has a meaningful impact, and I think a disproportionately meaningful impact in some of the key areas and geographies and groups that are touched. But I think from a hiring perspective, I think we've always we're not a huge organization, so we're not churning through hundreds of people a year. But I think one of the things we've always been driven by is sort of the mentality of You know, we hire athletes, not position players. We want people who are great individuals who bring a diverse background. And I'll take myself as an example. So I'm a political science major with an MBA, and I can install our product on any make, model, year of vehicle from 2006 or newer. So that doesn't get taught in a lot of business school or political science verticals. And the reality is, we can teach all of the things we do every day. We need to find the people who we think can move us forward. And so we work aggressively. We're 50% women. We work aggressively to make sure we have a good footprint with respect to women in our organization. And we work aggressively when we hire for finding individuals who, in an industry, trucking, that doesn't line up in a very diverse way, finding individuals who can sort of drive a diverse employee base and bring a diverse set of skills and backgrounds, and not just because they came from trucking or clean energy. We can teach all of that.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And then Ryan, how about some of the startups that you're working with? How are they approaching diversity in the workplace and hiring underrepresented people?
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak to the startups. I can tell you something that we recently did. Benjamin Jealous, who's the former president of the NAACP, hosted a town hall at our company. And he had some very good advice, because I think somebody from our company said something like, well, we're very interested in diverse candidates. They're just not applying to our positions. And his response was, well, you probably need to go out and look in places that you haven't looked before. And you can't just expect, Black and Veatch is not necessarily a household name, people to know about our company and our opportunities. So we have to take some responsibility for making sure that we're actively out seeking that talent in places that we haven't historically looked before, to make people more aware of that. And we just hired our new CIO. He's a person of color, Irvin Bishop Jr., just announced last week. So I don't know if that's a direct result of that activity, but I'm glad to see some change happening.
Thank you. Eric, do we have time for more, or are we wrapping up here? Oh, I think you're on mute.
We may need to transition unless there's like a burning question that you feel we should cover. One more?
Maybe just a really quick lightning round. In a few words, what makes Kansas City unique and beneficial to propelling the clean tech innovation scene? Maybe we'll go Sunny and Jeff and Ryan.
Untapped potential, for sure, in terms of clean energy, deployment, and the Midwestern niceness. I think those two things could unlock a lot of value.
Yeah, and I was going to rank order them differently. The opposite. I was going to go Midwestern niceness first. I think you have a pretty collaborative group of people who want to get together and help you think through your problems, which is awesome. And then I do think it's just a untapped potential. I think about trucking. There's such a huge opportunity in the Midwest, in KC, for what we do, and so it's a great mesh.
Yeah, I would say just the latent talent pool. I think there's more engineers and artists in Kansas City than there is per capita, at least in most other places in the country. And a lot of that talent has not necessarily been directed towards entrepreneurial activities. And so it just needs a little bit of a spark.
All right. So, Susie, should we ask another poll question to see if people are with us, and then we'll transition to St. Louis?
Yeah, we can do that. Thank you, Sunny, Ryan, and Jeff for sticking with us for the Kansas City discussion. It was great hearing from you. That we'll transition with a quick poll to St. Louis. Okay, and the question is, which alternative protein trends have you tried? And this is multiple choice. You've maybe tried them all or none of them, and you're going to be a cow fan forever. Everyone's own preference. We'd love to hear where you're at. We'll give it a couple seconds more as the votes come through. Okay.
All right. All right. Okay. All right, we've had some adventurous folks out there, which is great. So interesting. A lot of people have tried plant-based meats, which is I'm actually a big fan, even though I do like my meat. So all right.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think it's overall pretty good. It looks like everybody's
Yeah.
pretty willing to try new things and take some risks.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, let's transition now to St. Louis. Yeah, we've got some great people here. We have Orlando Saez, who's the founder and CEO of Acre. We have Sarah Schlafly, who is the co-founder and CEO of Mighty Cricket. And we have Brian Dixon, who's the COO of Capital Innovators, which is doing great work supporting innovators, corporations, the ecosystem, and has a great kind of macro view of everything that's going on in and around St. Louis. So what I'd like to do, similar to what we did last time, perhaps we can have each of you take a few minutes to introduce yourselves, and then I'll launch into some questions. Orlando, do you want to go first with who you are? What does Acre do?
Yeah, gladly. Thank you, Eric. So yeah, my name is Orlando. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Acre. We essentially motivate growers into making smarter crop management changes that put more money in their pockets, and they make decisions that are more sustainable. That's how our work matters. Love the local market. In fact, we have two institutional investors, Lewis and Clark Ventures from St. Louis, and Flyover Capital from Kansas City. So we straddle both cities here in terms of the Midwest. Started my career in software development and telecommunication. I've been very fortunate to work in some fast growth companies. I come from the telecom into ag, so you may ask, what the heck am I doing here? About 6 years ago, my curiosity led me to agriculture. I bought into a farm with my co-founder, 6,000 acres of corn and soybeans. They say if you want to be successful, you got to get in character. 4 years ago, we started Acre. I learned a ton about agriculture and what farmers really care about when it comes to technology and management. And so what we do is we have technology that flies and collects data and performs crop diagnostics so that we can, again, motivate growers into doing the right thing. I'm here because of the third-party spotlight effect. I want to say, organizations like CET, Thrive, Investment West, especially when you're moving across industries, a lot of people don't give you a lot of credit when you're moving from a CEO of a telecommunication company and now agriculture. Third-party validation is everything, so excited to be here.
All right, thanks, Orlando. Sarah.
All right, so I'm Sarah Schlafly, the CEO of Mighty Cricket. We are an insect-based company, but our whole mission is to further clean protein. So we started with insects, but that includes also hemp protein, and then we have an upcycled sunflower flour that's 39% protein. And so we get Americans over the stigma of eating insects by milling them into a very fine flour and then blending them undetected into delicious food. So you get all the benefits nutritionally, environmentally of eating insects without having that fear factor of eating a whole bug.
All right. And Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself and Capital Innovators.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm grateful to be here. My name is Brian Dixon, and I'm the COO and Managing Director of Capital Innovators. And what we focus on is we run accelerator programs, we run corporate innovation programs, and then we manage venture capital funds as well. Brief background on myself before I dive a little bit into Capital Innovators. I'm from St. Louis. I was actually in law school at Washington University when Bitcoin came out, and I became incredibly fascinated by cryptocurrency before it became what it was today. And I took about 2 to 3 months really researching Bitcoin and blockchain technology in depth. And at that point, I said, I am not going to be an attorney long term. I want to do this. And so I ended up finishing up school and going through the process, getting incredibly involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And then that piggybacked me into learning about Capital Innovators, which at the time was very early on in St. Louis. St. Louis had just opened its first premier co-working space, which today is called T-Rex and is one of the most successful ones in the city, and ended up joining the CEO of Capital Innovators pretty close to the ground floor. And then we've been able to grow that over the last 7 years into an organization that now we've funded over 130 companies. We've helped those businesses raise over $400 million in capital. And then in terms of like job growth for St. Louis, we've created a little over 2,000 jobs from the companies we funded. So the businesses have experienced quite a bit of growth, which is great. And we work very closely with a lot of the other ecosystem players in terms of real estate players, other venture firms, a lot of different startups that we see each year. And then as we expanded our model from just the traditional accelerator into corporate innovation, we began running accelerator programs on behalf of larger corporates. So we've run programs on behalf of Merits locally. We ran the Ameren Accelerator program, which I'll discuss further, and done a lot of other corporate innovation programs around the world. We actually ended up helping Inno Energy out of the Netherlands scout a lot of technologies for their programs that they run as well. And as we continued to grow, we began raising larger investment funds. So we focus on early stage companies at the accelerator space, which is usually a $100,000 check size. And then we also do what we call our early Series A, where Capital Innovators is investing $500,000 to $1 million check sizes when companies are raising a couple $1 million round.
All right. Thanks, Brian. So, Orlando, I'll start with you because you've had an interesting journey. Acre actually started in Minnesota. I think that's what you were referencing when you,
Yes.
you know, got your hands dirty on the farm. But then you ended up in St. Louis. Kind of, how did that happen? What kind of pulled you to St. Louis?
I guess I go to this third-party spotlight effect. You know, when you're trying to chase either customers or money in order to thrive and survive, you do anything you need to. The technology proof point was important to have, and that was Minnesota, right? Understanding, do we have a product that anybody cares about? Finding the capacity of dollars didn't happen in Minnesota. You know, especially in a small community. Winnebago is, you know, it's a very small community. So we leveraged as much as we could with our own money and angel investors. That's when we knew that we needed to look elsewhere. We came to Chicago, basically, if you remember, and we were fortunate enough to have the CET in 2018 spotlight us. But again, Chicago's not an agricultural city. Illinois is, but not Chicago. So really what propelled us to St. Louis was several things. The nexus of agriculture innovation in this country happens in basically 2 states, North Carolina, Research Triangle Park, and St. Louis. It's that simple. Bayer Crop Science is the largest agricultural company in the world. Their North America headquarters is in St. Louis. So that was one aspect. And the second is, you know, our company is a technology company, but we need to balance it out with science and plant science. And so we needed kind of a crazy doctor that understood agronomy. And we found that in the way of the Danforth Plant Science Center. Danforth is the largest plant science center in the world. It's an NGO, independent. And we receive a grant from the National Renewable Energy Lab in Wells Fargo, because the work that we do is interesting with respect to trying to compel the industry to apply chemistry only when it's justified. And from that perspective, it's been very rewarding to be part of the ecosystem of St. Louis and the Danforth Center, and working with a whole bunch of plant science geeks that, you know, way above my pay level. And while we're geeking out with the electronics of what we do and kind of intersecting those two. So that has been very rewarding. So we definitely are in the local market, and St. Louis is the right place for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, Orlando, you did mention, you know, obviously access to, you know, plant scientists and plant science is critical, but I mean, you're also, I mean, in a lot of ways, you're a big data company. You're running some fairly sophisticated algorithms and you know, computations. How are you finding, your ability to hire sort of the experts in those disciplines?
Not easy. So I'll confess, it's kind of funny because either the very computational folks that do a lot of image computation, especially in the industry, Bayer and climate, they use satellite and all that. Most of those folks are not in St. Louis. So in a post-COVID world, virtual hiring is very good. So we kind of balance some of the folks locally, even though we prefer that. And for every hire, we say, hey, virtual work is okay. Within a year, we're hoping that you can consider St. Louis a home. And we encourage that only because I do believe in the proximity of serendipity of teams, and innovation happens when you have water cooler conversations. And so that proximity is important. But frankly, in terms of getting machine learning, which we have a significant stack related to what we need to evaluate, there's not a lot of talent. So we've had to reach out outside of the region to be able to remote hire those people and hopefully bring that capacity. I'll share this just out of curiosity for some people. It's like when we started the company, we have about 10 full-time employees now and about 30 seasonal workers. 25 of those, including myself, were not in agriculture before starting in this company. So one of the things that I'm proud of, the diversity that we bring, is to try to drive people back into agriculture and good talent. And that's something that I'm very, very grateful for.
Great. All right. Sarah, your background is in consumer packaged goods. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you sort of came about being a co-founder of Mighty Cricket. How did that all transpire?
How did I get to eating bugs? Yeah, that's a question that I get a lot because I grew up with a very American diet, lots of meat and potatoes. And so when I studied accounting in college, but then when I graduated, I realized I wanted to get into food, and that's my passion. So I started a nutrition cooking school where I blended culinary skills with nutritional education. And from there, I saw a lot of the challenges people have with eating healthily. And one of them is money, of course. The other is time. So there's always this balance between time and money. And then I went into the corporate world for a couple of years working at a national food brand and got to learn manufacturing at a national level. And then I was working in marketing there. And then I decided that it was time for me to start my second company. So I met my co-founder and we innovated some products to make Mighty Cricket. And I landed on crickets because after doing some research on clean proteins, I realized that the world is in dire need of a clean protein source that can carry us through the next 30 years of exponential world growth. And today, the clean proteins that we have on the market are either really expensive or non-existent. So I discovered that insects require a fraction of natural resources compared to beef, chicken, pork. And not only that, they also provide nutrition that you can't find in plant-based proteins. So I'm talking about vitamin B12, which vegans have to supplement. Even the form of nutrition is more bioavailable in insects than it is in plants. So if we consume crickets, which are very high in omega-3s, we're going to actually absorb more omega-3 fatty acids than we would the omega-3s that we get from avocados. So that's just diving deep into the world of nutrition. I learned all these things, and that's why I became passionate about insects as opposed to some of the other clean plant-based proteins, although I'm really excited about the plant-based proteins too, because I think that combined with insects, we can create a world that has delicious, nutritious, cleaner meats, and it'll be able to provide access to clean protein when my daughter reaches my age. in a way that we don't really have today, because it's still, it's a niche market, so it's expensive. Until we get that economies of scale, it's going to be like that. But the people, the early adopters are the ones that are really bringing this to the market and leading the way for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting. I mean, you talked a little bit about your blending strategy. Is that, I mean, to be frank, is that a way of getting people over call it the fear factor of insect protein?
Exactly. So we take the crickets and we lightly roast them, so they're this delicious nutty flavor. And then we mill them into a really fine powder. And that way, to be honest, when I started this company, I didn't want to eat insects. I really didn't. It's kind of funny that I started a food company in which I was very timid about eating the product. And it wasn't so much the powder, even though that kind of initially weirded me out working with it. It was more the whole bug. It took me a year into Mighty Cricket to actually work up the gumption to eat a whole insect. And once I did, now it's super easy. It's funny how quickly our brain can adapt and adjust to new environments and new foods. Just like we see in COVID now, everything that wearing masks is second nature. That's what Mighty Cricket is working to get the Americans to view insects as, just another food group.
Well, we had a sampling session at Clean Energy Trust with your protein powder and your oatmeal products, and they did taste great. And we there was no, we did not discern any difference. So so other than I think that initial psychological hurdle, once we got over it, we were like, yeah, this is good stuff. And one of our team members actually in St. Louis also had it sprinkled on like his frozen yogurt one time. I don't know who would do that, but one of the frozen yogurt places offered it as as an add-on, and he said it was great as well.
Yeah.
So all right, Brian. So here at CT, we're very familiar with the work that you've been doing with Ameren. One of, I think, many corporate clients that you work with. But can you tell us a little bit about your work partnering with them and kind of I think interestingly, the assets and resources they bring to the table to complement sort of the work that you do?
Sure, absolutely. So Ameren was a really unique partnership when we first structured that, because it had never really been done in the way that we did it before. And what we did was we took Ameren and partnered them with Capital Innovators and also the University of Missouri statewide system. So that included 4 colleges. It was Mizzou, UMKC, Missouri Science and Technology in Rolla, and University of Missouri St. Louis. And the reason we did that and structured the partnership that way is because Ameren really desired to get a lot more engagements from a student perspective as well, to try to hire new employees that are interested in the energy space. And so through the program we ran for them, leveraging the university part of the partnership, we had 80 student interns that helped out, and each company that we invested in got access to a team of student interns that got to work with them through the entirety of the 12-week accelerator. And then they also got that engagement with Ameren. So that was a big benefit. And then through that, Ameren ended up hiring 6 people from the accelerator program. So they got a lot of great new talent that they were able to integrate into the organization. In terms of the program itself, I think one of the really unique access points that we were able to provide for their employees to the program in terms of their resources is what we call corporate champion teams. So Capital Innovators constructed this model where we wanted to make sure that their employees got an opportunity to work hands-on with the accelerator companies in a really unique way that wasn't just a workshop here and there, but a much more structured engagement. And what we do is we went in and we actually trained Ameren employees to help them understand how working within a startup is very different from what they do during their day job, and how they're extremely strapped with their time and their money and their energy and their resources, and they have to be very, very efficient. And so we, at the beginning of the engagement, we trained the employees, and then when we invested in the energy tech startups, each company got 1 to 2 employees from Ameren that got to work closely with that business on a weekly basis as well. So not only was the startup getting the opportunity to get the insights into the energy space with the direct employee engagement, the employees from within Ameren were learning how to work more like a startup and be more creative back inside their environment. And that part of the engagement was so successful that in year 1, they had 1 to 2 employees per startup that they would pair them with. And by year 3, we were placing 5 to 7 corporate employees in these champion teams with each startup. So, they experienced a ton of benefit in helping their employees become more creative. But through that engagement, we helped Ameren source just under 1,000 startups across, I think it's 56 different countries that resulted in 19 different investments. And so we're continuing to manage that portfolio of companies, continuing to help engage them with Ameren for different pilot projects, because there was probably 5 or 6 different pilots that they ended up engaging with from the companies that were invested in. And I know somebody earlier asked a question about how different organizations are working to be better about diversity and inclusion. And, we really placed a really high importance on that when we were sourcing for companies and engaging with underrepresented founders. And we're really happy to say that 53% of the companies that we invested in were founded and represent diverse and inclusive founders.
Great, great. And the focus of sort of the innovations and technologies that you were working on, did it transcend, electrons? Were you also looking at solutions for managing sort of deskless workers or remote workforces, or training, using, augmented reality, or, did it transcend, what one might typically think of, generating or conserving electrons?
Absolutely. So I think actually a much smaller percentage of our investments had anything to do with the electrons side of the argument. It was much more around digital solutions that could help Ameren, their workforce, in different technology disciplines they were looking to advance. So as an example, we had investments that we made in companies that were on the construction technology side of the business. So Ameren has a large construction practice that manages a lot of their work that they do in that space. And so ways that they could connect different construction technologies together. We had other investments that we made in the cybersecurity space, or things where with blockchain, where you could actually create smart contracts to move energy between residential and commercial type entities through a variety of different terms and conditions that you could set. We did also have companies that we did invest in kind of down more at the electron side of things. We had some interesting stuff where one of our companies created a new patented form of IML graphene that allowed you to see a 300 to 400% increase in lithium ion battery storage. And so we helped them basically mature their technology from the lab to convert that into battery pouch cells so they could continue to test the technology. But I would say the vast majority of our investments were more on the digital solution side of things.
Right, right. And one last question. So Capital Innovators also has physical space where you house startups and entrepreneurs. How has that been impacted with COVID-19? I know here in Chicago we have a few large co-working spaces, and I think it's been somewhat tough. What's been your experience?
So we've been super fortunate actually, because during COVID, we actually transitioned 100% remote, and we've stayed remote since then. And because of the way that we've built our internal software systems for how we manage our program, a lot of our program, even when it's in person, is managed online. So I'm talking like gateways between our mentors and our subject matter experts and the Capital Innovators teams and the companies. We're tracking everything that's going on through our internal system. So we know who's meeting with who, how long was the meeting, what was the result of the meeting, what investors are they talking to. Like, we have a very robust database of all this information that we're already collecting. And so they're already uploading it into our digital system on a daily or weekly basis. And we're taking feedback on that as well to help refine and make the program better. And so whenever we had to transition to remote, since we do so much remote in a sense already anyway, it wasn't a big challenge for us. And a lot of the companies that we're investing in are technology entrepreneurs, so they're used to using remote tools. And so we were able to leverage existing solutions like Zoom, along with the proprietary system that we use internally, to continue managing the accelerator with the same level of integrity that we always have.
Great, great, okay. So similar to what we did in Kansas City, a lightning round, sort of, calling out organizations or stakeholders or early stage investors that have been really helpful to you in your development, or just that you call out as being, you know, key players in the ecosystem? Sarah, any ones that stand out for you in and around the market?
Well, in St. Louis, I have partnered with the Missouri Botanical Garden, and I've worked with their entomologists to answer questions and really understand how insects work and their pain receptors that they feel, which is almost next to nothing. And then we built an exhibit at the St. Louis Science Center, and that was an entomophagy exhibit talking about the practice of eating insects. So those are probably the two of the biggest. That there have been so many. Oh, Washington University in St. Louis. I've worked with a lot of the students there, and also worked with their chefs on campus to provide food with insects during their Earth Day festivals. So other universities too. Truman State University has been a big partner of mine. Those are the main ones.
Yeah, great. And Brian, you had mentioned T-Rex, but is that Cortex or is that a different entity?
So that's actually a different entity. So T-Rex,
Okay.
a lot of people don't know this, but T-Rex was actually initially founded to house capital innovators companies. So the St. Louis Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Group at the time had an allotment of capital that they were looking to invest towards economic development. And they saw what Capital Innovators was doing and the jobs we were creating early on. So they came to us and said, how can we help? We have this amount of money that we need to invest towards this cause. And so Capital Innovator said, you know, we would love to have a creative co-working space where we can house entrepreneurs that go through our program that we can offer to them for free as a perk for part of our program. And they're like, that's perfect. Let's find some space. And so that's initially how T-Rex was founded. And over the years, it grew, and now it probably has 200 plus companies that operate, 200 plus startups. It was a couple years later that St. Louis really started getting a lot of buzz about the growth of our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And the Cortex district started construction, and that had been in planning for probably 15 to 20 years. And that was a partnership between St. Louis University and Washington University and a lot of other public and private entities to make that come to life. But around 2015, 2016, the big co-working space within Cortex is called CIC, and that stands for Cambridge Innovation Center. And they started in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And at the time, they were arguably the most successful co-working space in the world before WeWork and some of these other larger players started expanding. And they had proven their model very successfully there, and were looking for other cities around the US where they wanted to build location number 2. And when they learned about how quick the entrepreneurial ecosystem was growing in St. Louis, that's where they selected for location 2. So they built that co-working space. That's a mixture, I would say, of startups that are a little bit further along, and then a lot of corporate innovation groups as well. Like Boeing has their venture capital and innovation group in there. AB Mari that creates different types of yeast compounds, they have their innovation group in there. And different intellectual property side of things on the attorney and accounting side.
Got it.
Yeah, actually, AB Maori is really into supporting startups. They developed a bread formula for cricket bread for Mighty Cricket, just because I connected with them, and they just did it with really no incentive for themselves. It was pretty awesome.
That's great. Orlando, you talked about Danforth, the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, which sounds like a tremendous resource. Any other gems you found?
Yeah, we are, I don't know, I guess, you know, Sarah has a story that is a lot more tasty than us. You know, we fly drones, we collect bad news, insect, and maybe I'll throw it over the fence to Sarah, but I think one of the things that it's impactful about not just the local economy, but agriculture is not in a very favorable economic cycle. And I think COVID has just amplified that issue. So just to give you an example, you know, we work for the big companies. They're our customers. We're a B2B and enterprise play to Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, FMC, some of these massive companies. During COVID, they have instituted policies where they cannot have their employees travel outside, right? And so they rely on us to do some of that because we're the ones hitting the field bringing diagnostics of their field so that we can tell them where their products can actually make a difference in the field. You know, Michael Pollan and Dan Barber says, you know, when you're going to the supermarket, don't walk in the inside aisles because who knows what's in there. Something that people tend to miss is what we're trying to enable is the opportunity to measure what was the practice that related to how that crop was grown. And that is massively powerful if you have a meter or a measuring mechanism to be able to bring that to market. So, you know, like I said, it's not as tasty as Sarah, totally get it, but exciting nonetheless. And we're lucky to be in St. Louis and having some people supporting and backing us up.
Great. All right. Susie, how are we doing on time and questions?
We have questions, but we are exactly at time. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to get to them.
Yeah. Can we maybe do one and people can drop off if they need to drop off?
Sure, we can do that. One question is for Sarah, and that's, when am I going to go to the grocery store and see bugs available for me to purchase? What's the US's holdup on getting to commercialization?
Well, I would say we're about between 5 to 10 years out from seeing it in mainstream supermarkets, which, you know, that's my goal. It's right around the corner, because I think with growing these really pressing climate change issues and with even COVID and these global pandemics, we're starting to see that our food supply is really fragile. So we're having to innovate really fast. And I think, especially Gen Z, as soon as they age into the market, they're going to be demanding these proteins. Like most Gen Zers who I talk to are very into the whole idea of eating insects. So that's my guess. The holdup is, of course, the stigma. So how we're combating that at Mighty Cricket is just making it a gourmet food. You know, right now it's a premium price. So we're taking the tail of lobster and applying that to crickets. Lobster used to be considered a poor man's food, and then it was marketed to Midwesterners who were unfamiliar with the water bug, as it was called, as a gourmet luxury from the East Coast. And so all of a sudden that drove up demand and people wanted it. So that's what we're doing with Mighty Cricket. Great. And Fresh Time, though, here in St. Louis is interested in carrying it. So that's one of the bigger retailers here in St. Louis. And then GNC Mexico. So this is in Mexico where insects is already quite established, but they're also looking at carrying Mighty Cricket products.
You'll have to keep us posted on when those become available, because I suspect some folks here are going to be interested in that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's get really quick questions to both Orlando and Brian. Orlando, a question came through on indoor ag, and if you see the possibility of Acre getting involved with indoor agriculture opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I answered the question, but at the Danforth Center, we are operationalizing our technology for greenhouse, because Danforth has massive amounts of greenhouses and they keep building. So we're part of their infrastructure. Yes, there's a potential to use our technology, not attached to drones, which is what we do outside, but stationary. We've seen it also attached to pivots and water applications and all kinds of crazy things. You know, we are in the IoT segment, and having more diagnostic technology is always important to be able to understand how the crops are growing.
Great, thank you. And then last question for Brian. You mentioned the internship program that you set up with Ameren, which triggered some questions on how can students get involved with the clean tech sector as well as just impact investing in general?
Sure. So in terms of wanting to get involved with the clean tech sector, I would recommend going and finding clean tech accelerator programs that you're interested in and reaching out directly to them, because they're always looking for people that want to support what they're doing from an internship perspective. And I don't know about the schedule of other clean tech programs, but we always would try to schedule ours during school semesters, our accelerator program, so that we could actually leverage students that are interested in internships. So whether it was in the fall, the spring, or people taking summer classes, we would always try to put our 12-week accelerator during one of those time slots. And I think a lot of other programs do that as well. So find ones that you're interested in, reach out. A lot of times they'll just have internship opportunities listed on the site, but if not, what they're usually trying to do, if you can't work directly with the accelerator, is they're seeking interns that can actually help the portfolio companies that they invest in. So my recommendation is don't be shy, just reach out directly to the directors of the people that actually manage the programs.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Eric, I'll turn it back to you. I think we got you on mute.
Well, first off, thanks to the audience for hanging with us. So I think we went over 5 minutes, but I hope it was worthwhile. I want to thank all the panelists who joined us: Sarah, Orlando, Brian, Ryan, Sonny, Jeff. It was great having you. And we are going to have one more of these featuring Wisconsin, most likely a mix between Madison and Milwaukee. I think as you log off today, you'll be asked to register for that if you're interested, so please do. Of course, we are always interested in feedback. Don't be shy. If you see things that we can do better or do differently, please let us know. We're open to feedback. So with that, I hope everybody has a great day, and just really excited about what's happening in the region. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.